So, my friends, it is an ancient rabbinic tradition to use the time of a sermon to chew you out for something. Or, if not to chew you out, at least to make you feel guilty. That way, you stay away for another year and you don't come back for a full year. But I don't need to tell you, this has been a brutal year for all of us. We don't need to be chewed out. So I want to try something unusual for a holiday gathering. This is a gathering of no guilt, no chastisement. I'm not going to give you any political insights. I'm not going to solve the problems of the governments of the world. I'm not going to get rid of anti-Semitism for you magically, alas. But I do want to give you some good news. And in that regard, I want to be for you the angel of Rosh HaShanah future. You remember Charles Dickens wrote that wonderful book in which they had the ghost of Christmas past and the ghost of Christmas future, and they cheered him up. Well, I had an opportunity this summer to experience your future. Not next year, not the year after that, but about 50 years down the road. And I want to share with you what I saw. But to do that, I have to take a running jump. And so I want to start by telling you one of my favorite stories in the Talmud. This is a story involving a man named Honi HaMa'agel, Honi the circle maker. And he was apparently a remarkable guy, because he had the capacity to make God and people want to do what he asked them to do. So Honi is in class one day, and he hears the rabbi give a sermon on a verse from Psalms 126. Shir hama'alot b'shuv Adonai et shivat Sion hayinu kecholmim. A song of ascents. When the Holy One brought back those who returned from Zion, we were like those in a dream. Now he knew that the Jews had been exiled from the land of Zion for 70 years before coming back. So he hears this verse and he thinks, how is it possible for a person to sleep for 70 years? How can you possibly wake up after that long of a nap? The next day, he's walking down the road, and he sees a person who's planting a carob tree. And he says to the planter, this tree, how long does it take for it to produce fruit? And the guy says it takes about 70 years. And Honi says, you think you're going to be around to taste any of those fruit? And the guy said, no, I won't. But there were people who planted for me so that when I came into the world, there was fruit to be had. And so I'm planting for the people yet to come so that they will have fruit. Honi went and sat down, and a magical sleep overtook him, as happens in Talmudic stories. And he doesn't know how long he sleeps, but during that time, the plants grow up all around him so that nobody sees him, and he sleeps uninterrupted for 70 years. And when he wakes up, he sees someone picking carob fruit from the tree. And he says, are you the guy who planted this tree? And he says, no, that was my grandfather, but I'm harvesting the fruit for my family now. So he's astonished, and he goes home, and he tries to convince everybody that he's Honi HaMa'agel. But of course, it's been 70 years. They tell him that his spouse no longer lives, his children are no longer alive, but his grandson is still alive. So they do what any good Sinai member would do. They go to synagogue. And there he is, and he hears the rabbi giving a sermon, and he quotes this guy, Honi, who lived a long time ago, but he had really great insight. And he leaps up and he says, hey, I'm Honi. And no one believes him. The story has a sad end. He's so distraught that no one can see him for who he is that he dies on the spot. And the rabbis say that's where the phrase comes, O chavruta o mituta, give me fellowship or give me death. You see, we cannot live isolated and alone. Human beings need the care of other human beings. We are deeply social creatures. And so here comes the story I promised you about being deeply social. Midsummer this summer, I get a call from a very distant relative. So distant that I had to have her tell me how we were connected to each other. I didn't remember how the Artsons and the Moores were still connected. But she tells me that this summer we're celebrating 125 years of our common ancestor in the United States. 125 years. That means that you're practically looking at a Mayflower Jew. My people may have come over right before Christopher Columbus stole all the credit. Turns out that David and Leah Komar came to America from the Ukraine. They are my great-great-grandparents. And they had a daughter, Rebecca, who married Benjamin Abtaker. They were my great-grandparents. And their daughter, Minna, married Matthew, my grandparents, and also Matthew Artson's grandparents. And they had a son, David, who is our father, and our daughter Shira is in the room, and that makes 6 generations of people living in America. And I'm happy to reveal to you that the 7th generation is inside Shira right now, for which her husband Asher gets a lot of credit. 7 generations in the United States. How many of you are first generation? How many of you are second generation? How many third? So I'm talking to a room full of first and second, and you are looking at 6 and 7. And here's the good news that I bring you from your future. There's a lot to complain about. There's a lot of bad politics. The countries that we adore, America and Israel, are going through a very difficult time. And what I want to tell you is underneath it all, this country is very good to us. This country is good to us. I got on Zoom with 70 cousins who are scattered all over the Northeast, the South, Chicago, a few in Canada, some in the Pacific Northwest, one in Hawaii, a handful have made Aliyah. And what I want to tell you is they're all still connected to being Jewish. They're not all observant, but in my family, I don't think they were. You know, there's a blessing that you say when you're reunited with someone who you haven't seen for more than a year. So I got the chance to recite that blessing and then to say Shehechianu and have 60 cousins who are all descended from 125 years ago, all of them say Amen. And one of them, in the middle of sharing their life stories, couldn't help themselves and said, "Oh my God, there's a rabbi in our family. Do you know how much that would have meant to David Komar? He loved the Torah." Now, this is a family that has all kinds of people doing all kinds of wonderful things, And they didn't single out being a rabbi because they think that's a profession any of them want their children to follow. They did it because what it meant was that in this family, that blue thread has not been cut. The blue thread holds. That's my news for you. But it takes some work on our part. We have to do what it takes in our generation to make sure that we still hold on to each other, to our people, to Torah, to Israel, to all the things that make us us. Because it gives us this magic power to persevere and to continue and to remember. There's a wonderful rabbinic midrash, a legend, that says that when our ancestor Jacob was on his deathbed, he was worried that none of his children would continue the tradition. After all, they were in Egypt. It was a foreign land, a totally different culture. What are the odds of their holding on? And as he's dying, his kids surrounded the bed and they said, Shema Yisrael, hear, O Israel. Israel was his name, remember? Listen, Dad, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Your God is our God. We are holding on. And it is said that at that point, Jacob whispered under his breath, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed, the line that we whisper after the Shema. We're quoting a dad who gets to know that it doesn't stop with him. So I come to you, all you first and seconds, and I tell you from 5, 6, and 7, that if we keep doing what we need to do, if we stand together, we keep our traditions alive, we educate ourselves, we keep Hebrew spoken and sung in our midst, we keep reading from these ancient sacred books, we keep arguing with each other about the kinds of things that matter to everybody and the kinds of things that only Jews care about. For example, I know you think gefilte fish is disgusting. We should argue about this. But we owe this country a debt of gratitude. It has, for all of its flawed, provided a haven for the Jewish people who have flocked to its shores from all around the world, as it provided a haven for so many millions of people. It is an imperfect democracy. It has a lot of bumps and bruises. It needs a lot of fixing. And we can continue to yell at each other about how to do that. But God bless America for what it did for my family and for yours, and where we can move together. So let us make a promise to each other. When you guys are at 6 and 7, and my family is at 10 or 12, let's gather together again so that we can recognize that thanks to the lives that we committed ourselves to, our children's children's children still know what it means to be a Jew, and that blue thread still binds them. Shana Tova. We continue now with the highlights of the Musaf prayer, beginning with Aleinu and Malchuyot, which is found on page 154. It is the custom for some of us to bow all the way to the floor. So here's your first opportunity to do an act of charity. One of us is 66. I can get down on the floor just fine, but if no one is there to help pull me up, I'm going to stay there for the rest of the service. That will make the service longer, by the way. So if some strapping, strong person wouldn't mind coming and standing next to me to help lift me up, I would be very grateful.